thank you all for joining me today. It's really great to be with you. I'm doing this talk for the first time, so bear with me. I've tried to make it as simple as possible, although we are talking about a system that few of you will be familiar with. So my name is Sabine Horner. I'm a grief nutritionist, an Ayurvedic health practitioner and yoga therapist. I lost my husband over 8 years ago, and since then I've learned a lot about grief. I've studied it from the Western and Eastern perspective, and what I came to recognize is that the physical and energetic impact of grief is often overlooked. In my talk today, I've tried to bring together all these often overlooked aspects of grief and explain what's happening in our body that contributes to the many confusing symptoms we can experience. Today, I'll share a simple framework that helped me make sense of my own grief and that I now using only natural tools. And Ayurveda understands health as a balance between body, mind, and spirit. When one area is affected, it will affect the other two as well. And Ayurveda also teaches us that everything follows a pattern, including us. So when something goes out of balance, the body shows symptoms. And these symptoms are not random, they are meaningful. They are signals that we can learn to read and respond to. And there are two key principles that I would like to share with you and that are very important. Like increases like, and opposites restore balance. So we'll come back to this because it's key to understanding why certain things help when we're grieving. Now, to understand the effect of grief, it's important to understand a few other principles. In Ayurveda, everything in nature, including our bodies, is made up of 5 elements. These are ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And these combine into 3 fundamental energies. Vata, which is made of ether and air, so air energy. It governs movement, transport, and communication in our body. So your breathing, your nervous system, your 5 senses, circulation, everything that moves in your body. And when this air energy is balanced, you feel creative, flexible, and you love excitement and new experiences. Then there's Pitta, fire energy made of fire and water. It's responsible for transformation and digestion in the body. Not just food, but also of information and emotions. And when Pitta is balanced, you feel focused, warm, and energized. You have sharp focus, ambitious drive, and analytical clarity. And then there's Kapha, heavy earth energy, which gives our body structure and is responsible for lubrication. Your bones, your tissues, your immunity, the things that keep you grounded and protected, that's governed by this heavy earth energy. And when Kapha is balanced, you have remarkable stamina, emotional stability, and natural compassion. You're a very loving person. All 3 energies govern essential bodily functions. So we all have these in our body and our minds. We need Vata to move, Pitta to digest and process things, and Kapha to bind and hold everything together. But here's the important bit. During grief, Vata, the air energy, becomes elevated in everyone. So now you might be wondering, if grief increases Vata in everyone, why does it feel so different from person to person? So part of the reason is that we are all naturally a mix of these 3 energies, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, in different ratios. Most of us are a combination of 2 or 3 of them. And this shapes how our body and mind responds to stress, including grief, which is emotional stress. So even though Vata rises in everyone during grief, the way it shows up can vary. Some people may notice more anxiety, sleep disruption, racing thoughts. Others might feel sharper emotions and bursts of anger, and some may feel heavy, stuck, and withdrawn. And your experience is also influenced by the imbalances that already exist when grief hits. None of us start from a perfectly balanced slate. We all have existing imbalances, whether that's stress from caring for a loved one, or digestive issues, emotional strain, or simply the way we've been living. Modern day life doesn't help. So when grief hits and Vata rises sharply, it interacts with what's already there. Understanding this can help you make sense of your symptoms and respond in ways that support your body and mind during this very challenging time. Now we come to Ayurveda's understanding of grief. And now that we understand the basics of Vata, let's explore what actually happens after a profound loss from the Ayurvedic perspective. Now, grief is like a sacred window. It's an intense period of transition where personal growth and development and transformation can happen. It's a whole body, mind, spirit experience. Grief affects every single part of our being. Let this sink in. Grief is emotional stress. The body, unfortunately, perceives it as a threat, and this triggers a huge stress response on top of everything else we're faced with, which can overwhelm our nervous system. And during grief, I've already mentioned, Vata increases dramatically, but this is natural. The air and ether element rise to create a subtle and hypersensitive experience. This can connect us to our loved ones on the other side. It allows us to have deeper awareness and this spiritual connection when our senses are wide open. But at the same time, this heightened sensitivity can also make us vulnerable to overstimulation. So you may also notice restlessness, racing thoughts, or a sense of being all over the place. And that's Vata's mobile quality in action, energy that is in constant motion. So in short, grief is a time of high Vata energy and a time of lots of change, movement, heightened awareness, and great instability. But this wouldn't be so bad if it weren't. Oh, sorry. I think for modern life. Sorry about this. Here's the problem we face in our modern society. There's a lack of understanding of grief and its impact, and this can lead to serious potential for dis-ease. Now, here's why. There's a lot of pressure to suppress our emotions. In our culture, there's often pressure to move on, to stay strong, to not burden others with our grief, but suppressing anything, including our emotions and feelings and thoughts, can aggravate Vata further. Emotions need to move. The word emotion literally means energy in motion. So when we push emotions down, we're adding more pressure to an already overwhelmed system. Number two, loss of connection. We no longer live in communities that could support us. And I noticed this very strongly when I lost my mother and I had to go to Vienna and use public transport system, you know, and there wasn't a community that could support me. I felt very much alone. So losing someone can also mean losing connection to people we were close to. Like I lost my family-in-law. And withdrawal from society, from other people, feeling unseen or unheard or alone increases Vata further. Then there's our coping mechanisms with grief. Often we are not taught how to sit with emotional pain or process it in a healthy way. So food often becomes the primary coping mechanism, and it's also socially accepted. Food becomes self-soothing, but modern comfort foods are the opposite of what we need to balance vata energy. They can actually make things worse. Then there's overstimulation and lack of rest. You may notice this in yourself. Modern day society with all its distractions is not helpful either. And we binge watch series on Netflix. We constantly scroll through social media. We over-exercise to escape our feelings and emotions, running away from them. We also push through exhaustion instead of allowing the body to rest. All these activities overstimulate an already hypersensitive nervous system and also our hypersensitive senses, and they cause even more movement and restlessness. Can you see that? And this lack of rest also further depletes our energy. So remember, like increases like, and if vata is already high, mobile, overstimulated and depleted, and we then add more mobile stimulating activities while not allowing ourselves to rest, we make things worse. So vata imbalance without intervention can get worse, and temporary overwhelm can become chronic anxiety. Digestive issues can become long-term gut issues, and insomnia can become a permanent pattern. But there's something else that can happen too. If vata remains unchecked, it can start pushing the other two energies out of balance as well. So this cascade effect can lead to a wide range of emotional, mental, and physical symptoms that bereaved people often find bewildering and confusing. So initial vata imbalances that show up as anxiety, overthinking, panic attacks, indecisiveness, or insomnia on a physical level, or poor digestion like gas and bloating, or weight loss, then can, if this vata energy then continues to be elevated, it can then aggravate pitta. We call this vata pushing pitta. So this can then show up as irritability, frustration, and anger, but also perfectionism or workaholism. And you may also feel a strong urge to control things. And on a physical level, you may get symptoms like acid reflux, inflammation, like arthritis or gastritis, skin rashes. Migraines are very common, and also a feeling of overheating, too much heat in the body in general. And eventually, kapha can become disturbed too. And this can show as lethargy. Yeah, you can't get out of bed in the morning, brain fog, you can't think clearly, sluggish digestion, emotional eating, and also emotional withdrawal or feeling of you can't let go of things, you become very attached to things. So this is why grief symptoms can feel so varied and confusing. And the symptoms vary between people depending on which energies are affected, but vata is usually the driver. It's the initial imbalance that sets everything else in motion. And the good news is that addressing vata first can actually improve other symptoms as well. This is very empowering, and it means there's something practical that we can do. But there's another piece of the puzzle to our confusing grief symptoms that's really important to understand, and that earned me the name Gut Grief Guru. Now, we've heard that grief is intense emotional stress, and stress directly affects the nervous system. And in Ayurveda, the nervous system is governed by vata. So when Vata is high, the nervous system becomes more reactive and the body shifts into a stress response. So what we know as fight, flight, or freeze. And when the body is in this state, it prioritizes survival. Digestion becomes very, very unimportant. So when we're in the stress response, blood is diverted away from our digestive system to the limbs, to the heart, to the liver, to help us run away from the threat, the saber-toothed tiger in ancient times. Not much has changed in our physiology since then. You might notice that food is sitting in your stomach heavily, or that your stomach is tied in knots, or that your appetite is just not there. And so this stress response impacts your gut, your appetite, your digestion. And when this goes on for a prolonged period of time, you get nutrient deficiencies and digestive issues, but also imbalances in your gut microbiome, if you've heard of that. So your beneficial gut bacteria are also massively affected by stress and they get depleted. And they are really key to keeping us in good health. So when your digestion is compromised, your ability to cope with grief is also compromised. Your anxiety, your foggy brain, your insomnia, your energy, your mood, all of these common grief symptoms can get worse by nutrient deficiencies and gut issues. So this makes supporting our digestion one of the most practical and powerful things you can do when you're grieving. But this is where many people struggle. Let's face it. When we're grieving, we often don't have the energy or motivation to cook. So what happens? We start skipping meals, we eat at irregular times, and irregularity further increases Vata energy. We also turn to processed convenience foods, which are low in fiber and more difficult to digest. And this combination of irregular eating and eating low fiber foods can also destabilize our blood sugar levels. So you can see this, and this is what I call a double whammy. So this blood sugar spikes and drops on top of our grief roller coaster, the emotional ups and downs. So these big swings in blood sugar can also cause sugar cravings and make comfort eating, can lead to emotional and comfort eating. And this creates a vicious cycle. So we have no energy to cook, we skip meals or eat processed food, get blood sugar instability, this worsens our symptoms, we get more irritable, more anxious, more angry, more tired, and we have even less ability to cook. So poor nutrition makes grief harder, but grief also makes good nutrition harder. So this is the problem we are facing, and it's quite a lot, isn't it? So we have seen that grief naturally raises Vata energy, creating all this restlessness, hypersensitivity, instability, ungroundedness, and emotional overwhelm. But when we understand what drives Vata higher, we can avoid behaviors that make it worse. And importantly, we can prevent these short-term imbalances from turning into more serious issues later, issues that often nobody connects any longer to your loss that you experienced maybe years ago. So how do we actually balance Vata? That's a crucial question. Now, Ayurveda gives us a whole treasure trove of simple, natural tools and practices, as you can see here, to support us while we are grieving. And these include nutrition, daily routines, meditation, breathing practices, herbs, color therapy, yoga, and other supportive therapies, all designed to work with your body, not against it. And there's no one size fits all in Ayurveda. Everything is adapted to your original body, mind, constitution, your current imbalances, your life circumstances, your personality, and so on. And because grief creates this overwhelm in every aspect of your life, the support we use needs to be simple, practical, and manageable, and meeting people where they are in their grief journey. And the more tools like these we have in our grief toolkit, the better we'll be able to cope with the full impact of grief. Now, before I show you specific tools, I need to go back to this slide. Let's remember a key principle of Ayurveda. Opposites create balance. Now, how can we apply this to calming high Vata energy? Now, we need to look at its key qualities. All these three energies, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, have specific qualities. And two typical Vata qualities we've already touched upon are mobile and subtle, right? And remember, our senses are wide open and there's a lot of change and movement when we're grieving. And here are a few more qualities that are also important to recognize. Dry. We may be lacking nourishment, not drinking enough, or lack lubrication, not eating enough food with healthy fats. And your skin might be dry, your mouth, and you may feel depleted. Then there's cold quality. You feel chilled, but also isolated, craving warmth and comfort. That's very common in grief. And then there's the rough and irregular quality. Your moods or energy may feel up and down, irregular, and your routines also become irregular. Not just your meal routine, also your bedtime routine. And then there's light. You may feel ungrounded, scattered, or like you might float away. Does any of this sound familiar? Which of these qualities do you recognize in yourself right now? Now, here's where it gets really practical. We can use opposite qualities to calm Vata. If Vata is cold, we can use warmth. If it's mobile, we can use stillness. If it's light, we can use grounding. And let me show you now in the next few slides how we can apply this principle of opposites restore balance. Now, first of all, we can calm Vata through breath, sound, and movement. So we are moving now into the practical part of the talk. So the simplest and most accessible tool that you have is your breath. In Ayurveda, Vata governs all movement in the body, including your breath and your nervous system. I've already mentioned this. And when you slow and deepen your breath, you directly influence this Vata energy and gently change your response to emotional stress. So slow, deep belly breathing signals the body that you are safe. And it puts us into rest and digest mode, improving our digestion. And the best thing about your breath is you can use it anytime, anywhere. It's there, it's free, it's natural, and it's very powerful. But then we can also use rhythmic movement, repetitive sounds, chewing mindfully, and gentle yoga or meditation or other gentle movement practices to calm Vata. So repetitive hand movements is something that people actually automatically do, or also traditionally, you know, like the rosary in Austria. When my aunt died, I was invited in church and we were repeating the rosary all the time, over and over and over, you know, like with there were lots of women in the congregation. We were all you know, doing this together. So that was very calming because it's repetitive, it's predictable. So it's it gives your body the feeling of safety. It knows what's coming next. But keeping your hands busy is also very important. So while you do the rosary in Greece, they also have like what's called a komboloi, and you can see men sitting outside the cafes doing this all the time with their kind of rosary. So that's very calming. Knitting, drawing, painting, journaling, writing, all these hand movements, or cooking can be very, very supportive when we're grieving. And also just simply chopping vegetables, anything that's rhythmic can be soothing. And then repetitive sounds like drumming, humming, or listening to very calming music. And chewing is also very good because it stimulates the vagus nerve, like all these repetitive sounds and movements, and the deep breathing do as well. Anything here that uses the throat stimulates the vagus nerve and puts us into rest and digest mode. So chewing, gargling, humming is also done here, very important. And then using stillness to counter the high mobile quality of this high air energy. And it doesn't have to be yoga or meditation, it can also be Tai Chi, Qigong, or Pilates. But what these gentle movements practices also do is they help us check in with our body and our minds, and allow us to check in, how am I feeling today? What do I need to support myself today? When I lost my husband, I had something like, I started every morning sitting still and just being with my grief for half an hour, sometimes an hour, and I was just there with my grief. And I heartily recommend you do something similar, like set time aside for your grief, where you can just sit still and notice what's going on for you. And this is also something I do in my yoga classes. We use breath, sound, relaxation, and slow repetitive movement to calm the nervous system, release tension, and reconnect with a sense of steadiness and inner calm. Now, I also mentioned that Vata governs our 5 senses, so we can also balance Vata through the 5 senses. So, and also decrease this overstimulation in our modern day life that we are exposed to on a daily level. To do something for our side, we can dim the lighting, we can use candles. Natural views are really calming for our eyes. Avoiding screens above all. We always come back to this one. Sound, we can use humming, drumming, repetitive sounds, nature sounds, like on a tape, on a DVD or a CD. Touch, massaging yourself, touching yourself becomes very important, especially when you've lost your partner. Soft clothing can help, and a weighted blanket can help us sleep. Smell, we can support this with essential oils like rose, can be very soothing and calming and grounding, and reach us even when nothing else can reach us, like Bach flower essential oils, that rose, wild rose, this one can help. And taste, soft, warm, moist, and grounding foods, not dry, not cold, not light. And we want to balance these Vata qualities that have gone out of balance. So when it comes to foods, specifically, let's talk about foods that balance Vata again. Regular meals, and to counter the irregular quality of Vata. Warm, cooked, easy to digest foods. Nothing difficult, nothing cold, as I said. Then include Vata reducing herbs and spices. And that can be fresh ginger, cumin, fennel, cinnamon, cardamom, but also these spice mixes that you can see in the picture. Hingvastak, or the other one is just a Vata Jhana from Maharishi Ayurveda, which you can't see at the moment. Favor naturally sweet tasting and grounding foods. So sweet tasting isn't sweet food. It can be honey and maple syrup, but it also includes meat. Anything that's nourishing, building, and that's truly comforting. Whole grains, vegetables, all kinds of fruit, and also root vegetables, like sweet potatoes and carrots. So sweet cravings aren't about sugar. Sweet cravings is your body asking for nourishment, because you have sweet cravings because you feel malnourished on either a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level. So check in and go for these sweet tasting foods rather than sweet foods. And I've already mentioned avoiding cold and dry foods, but also raw salads and leftover foods are very Vata imbalancing. And dry foods include crackers and chips. So just be aware of this. And avoid cold desserts after a meal. That will just ruin your digestion, because anything cold diverts blood away again from your stomach, and we need a lot of blood to digest our food properly. Be aware of difficult to digest foods like wheat and cow's dairy, and don't eat them particularly in the evening, and avoid late evening meals. Our digestion becomes weaker as the day progresses, and so evening meals have to be light and should be earlier and not later than 7:30, and to allow the body to digest it before we go to bed. And also avoid cold fluids, especially around meal times. I am always very adamant about that. That again drives blood away from your stomach, and we want it in the stomach. So favor more herbal teas if you can. And I know you may be thinking, I don't have energy to cook like this, to prepare fresh, warm, cooked, easy to digest food, but start small. And if you haven't got a slow cooker, I highly recommend you get one. A slow cooker can be your life savior. I wouldn't eat warm regular meals every day without my slow cooker. And if you find everything overwhelming, you can also just start with your breakfast. Have a light and warm breakfast. This will really set you up for the day and get you off the blood sugar roller coaster first thing in the morning by just stabilizing your blood sugar. So if you want more support when it comes to your meals, there are a lot of cooking videos on my YouTube channel, and I do a regular talk about food and grief, where I go into more depth about this whole topic. And there's also a free lottery-funded cooking workshop happening tomorrow if you're interested in joining. There's still 3 places available. Now, what's also important to balance this high Vata energy is restoring stability through our daily routine. Predictable routines calm Vata and create a sense of safety. And regular routines begin with sleep. When you sleep better, you wake at a more regular time. When you wake at a regular time, you can eat regular meals. When you eat regular meals, your blood sugar is stable. And when your blood sugar is stable, you cope better with grief, because you're supporting your energy, your mood, your mental clarity, everything. So it all connects. And here's what you need to know about sleep times, and a few basic ideas to help balance Vata one way or another. So in Ayurveda, we recognize, you can see it on the right, that there are different times of day with different energetic qualities. So between 6 and 10 p.m., the heavy kapha energy is dominant. And this is heavy and grounding earth energy that actually helps us make us sleepy and wanting to wind down and go to bed. If we push through this time period and go to bed later, we come into the pitta time of the night, when the fiery energy is more active and is actually there to process all the emotions, the toxins, the information from your day, and not your food or anything else. So when this fiery energy becomes active, we get the second winds. You can probably, you've all probably noticed this when you were still up at 11 o'clock and all of a sudden you became very active and creative again and you could write a whole book or whatever. So it then becomes harder to fall asleep. And if we push it even further and we go to bed after 2 a.m., this is where the light vata energy becomes dominant, and it's even harder then to go to sleep. This is actually the time of night when most of us wake up, because this energy, this light energy, just activates our mind. And that's also the time of night when we have most dreams and can, our brain becomes very stimulated again and can wake us up because there's so much going on in our brain. So use the kapha time, this heavy time between 6 and 10 p.m. to your advantage. So use calming, soothing, relaxing evening activities, reading, journaling, knitting. I've already mentioned a lot of them before because they also calm vata in other ways. Avoid screens and overstimulation because our senses are so wide open, I know it's tempting to distract ourselves by watching TV or scrolling on your phone, but it just overstimulates our hypersensitive nervous system. Use essential oils to help promote sleep and calmness, and frankincense can help, sandalwood or chamomile or simply lavender is easily available. Put a drop on your wrist or on your pillow, and that can help you sleep because it directly goes to your brain and influences your emotions, your limbic system, the center for your emotions and memories. Or take a warm Epsom salt foot bath. Warm grounding self-care rituals can also be very beneficial at night time. And Epsom salt also helps because it contains magnesium, which also helps us relax and sleep better and become calmer. Or put some warm sesame oil on your feet, on the soles of your feet, because sesame oil is heavy and grounding. And breathing techniques can help as well, like humming or left nostril breathing, which is calming as well. Just breathing through your left nostril. And a last simple tip, because I could go on forever about what can help us sleep better. There's something called nasya oil, also from Ayurveda, and you can put a drop in each nostril, and that also directly influences your brain, your mind, everything here, up here. So it can also help us breathe better through our nostrils during the night. So if you tend to be mouth breathing during the night, this can be very beneficial to stop you doing that. And then there's additional supports. So I recently trained in something called Marma therapy to add some more simple practical tools to what I can offer to bereaved people. And remember, the topic of this talk is understanding grief's energetic impact Now, what better way to counter its huge impact than by using a therapy that works directly with energy points on the body? So Marma points are energy points on the surface of your skin, and by gently touching these points, we can remove blockages, we can release tension, we can, of course, calm Vata again, we can support the senses because there's a lot of Marma points around the face, around the eyes, the ears, the nose. We can help release emotions stored in the body. And a simple Marma technique is actually taking the palm of your hand, putting it on your navel, and then slowly move your hands around in circles around the navel, just 7 times before a meal can improve your digestion. It's as simple as it can be. And Marma therapy can also help with many other common grief-related issues like migraines, grinding teeth, poor thyroid function, because there's also important Marma points here along the neck, and of course low energy and mood. So it's simple, gentle and powerful, and works with the body's energy system. So here's a visual guide to how we can balance Vata, a summary of what we've discussed today. If you're feeling cold, use warmth, warm food, drinks, and warm up your environment. If everything is too mobile, there's too much change, too much movement, use stillness, calming activities, regular routine. If there's too much light, you feel ungrounded and scattered, ground yourself and go barefoot on the grass. Eat root vegetables, which are grounding and heavy. If there's too much dryness in your body because you're lacking nourishment, fluids, fats, eat soups, stews, drink regularly, make a flask like me. You know, I wouldn't drink regularly if it weren't for my flask that I prepare every morning. And use healthy oils, like ghee, coconut oil, olive oil. Don't be afraid of good fats. Every cell in your body needs them. It can actually make us more anxious if we are on a low-fat diet. If there's too much subtleness, you feel too sensitive to noise, to smells, to everything, use grounding practices, touch yourself or have a massage by somebody, and connect with other people. And again, routine can be very grounding. We always come back to routine. And if everything's irregular, your digestion, because you've got gas and bloating, your sleep is irregular, your energy is up and down, your emotions are up and down, you know, just use, again, everything that's soft. Massage, cooked meals, soft clothing, and of course routine. Regularity is key. So the key takeaways is grief increases this Vata energy, which is high air energy, and this is a natural response. It helps us connect spiritually and to our loved ones on the other side. It can also help us process emotions, but in our modern overstimulating world, this imbalance can easily spiral out of control. Our symptoms are not random, they follow patterns. And once you understand these patterns, you can do something about them. And it's very simple how we can balance imbalances by using opposite qualities, as I've showed you throughout this presentation. And small, simple things can make a real difference. So it doesn't have to be huge. You don't have to do everything at once. Start small. Each practice that you try, each time you tune into your body and ask, what do I need right now? These are acts of self-care and healing, and they can help. And here's what I want you to remember most. your body has a tremendous capacity to heal, but only when it gets the right kind of support. The body whispers before it shouts. So when we learn to listen, when we notice, I'm feeling cold and isolated, or I'm restless and I can't sit still, we can then respond before symptoms move into something more. And this is preventative care. So grief is not a disease, but without early intervention on the physical and energetic level as well, it can contribute to long-term health issues. And I see this over and over again. Ayurveda offers a clear, gentle path to healing with many natural, highly effective practices and tools. And everything I've shared with you today comes from this ancient wisdom. And if you would like more support, it doesn't end with this talk. You can access a lot of free resources that I share via my website or my YouTube channel, and the grief-friendly pantry, for example, a recipe book of what to stock to be able to cook easy to digest, warm, freshly cooked meals. And there's my well-being community for grieving partners, which is free to join. There are my grief yoga classes, and then there's this funding cooking workshop, and there will be other funded workshops in the near future. If you're interested, then stay in touch, please. And here's how you can connect with me.